Clint Eastwood made his first public appearance in 5 months to support his friend Jane Goodall. The 93-year-old actor and director was photographed sitting next to the conservationist at her Reasons for Hope seminar in Carmel, California, late last month.
For decades, Clint Eastwood stood as one of Hollywood's toughest and most unshakable legends. But during a shocking live television appearance, the 96-year-old icon delivered heartbreaking news that left audiences stunned into silence. What began as an ordinary interview quickly turned into a deeply emotional moment nobody saw coming. Fans across the world were left asking the same painful question. Was this the final chapter for the man who defined generations of cinema? And what hidden struggle has Clint Eastwood been carrying behind the cameras all this time? And what do you think Clint Eastwood is making the news for this time? How has he been able to sustain fame for decades? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. To help us create more videos and uncover the latest royal drama, please subscribe. When legends finally become human. For most of his life, Clint Eastwood appeared almost larger than life itself, as though he belonged to a different category of human experience. In Hollywood, he became the face of quiet toughness, the kind of man who didn't need to shout to be feared or respected. Whether he was playing the sharp-eyed cowboy who spoke few words, or the hard detective who always seemed one step ahead of danger, he carried a presence that felt calm, cold, and completely in control. Behind the camera, he showed the same steady confidence as a filmmaker who trusted his vision and rarely looked for approval. Over time, something interesting happened in the minds of audiences. The line between Clint Eastwood, the actor, and the characters he played slowly began to fade. People did not just see him as someone performing strength. They began to believe he was strength itself. His silence looked like wisdom. His stillness looked like power. Even his tired gaze in later years seemed to carry meaning far beyond the screen. For decades, Clint Eastwood maintained a rare and enduring presence in Hollywood, outlasting shifting trends that saw many stars rise and fall. While the industry often builds celebrities quickly and then watches them fade due to scandal, changing tastes, or career setbacks, Eastwood remained consistently relevant as an actor and director, earning respect from critics and audiences across generations. Even into old age, he continued contributing to important conversations in cinema, appearing almost untouched by time. However, at 95, when he publicly reflected on aging, loss, and outliving many peers, the illusion of the untouchable Hollywood figure faded. The world instead saw a man without performance or persona, just a human being carrying decades of memories, regrets, and acceptance. His openness revealed the deeper reality of long life. Time eventually leaves its mark not only on the body, but also on the heart and spirit. Time ultimately reshapes every life completely. In that moment, the legend did not disappear, but it changed form. The invincible Clint Eastwood was no longer just a symbol of toughness on screen. He became something more relatable and real, a human being shaped by time, standing gently in the truth of his own life. Which confessions did Clint Eastwood make? What are the moments he regrets the most? Let's delve into the details of Clint Eastwood's quiet confession that revealed the pain success could never erase. Clint Eastwood's silent regrets revealed. For many years, Clint Eastwood cultivated a public image that appeared almost unshakable. To audiences worldwide, he represented strength, discipline, and independence, often through roles where he faced danger calmly, spoke sparingly, and acted decisively without hesitation. Over time, this screen persona merged with perceptions of his real life, creating the impression of a man in total control, never looking back and never slowing down. His long and demanding career in Hollywood reinforced this belief. Through persistence and hard work on countless film sets, he became a respected figure, admired for prioritizing action over emotion and forward movement over reflection. But behind that strong public image was a much more ordinary and deeply human story. It was a story shaped not only by success, but also by quiet regrets that fame could not erase. In an interview highlighted by Christianity Today, Clint Eastwood first spoke in a calm and confident way about life. Sitting beside his son, Scott Eastwood, he explained his belief that people should not spend too much time looking backward. In his view, always focusing on the past could hold a person back and stop them from growing. His son agreed, saying he had learned that same mindset from him, to keep moving forward no matter what happens. For a moment, it felt like a simple lesson about strength and focus. But when Scott left the conversation, the tone shifted. The confident voice gave way to something quieter and more reflective. Clint Eastwood began to speak more openly, as if the weight of years had finally found space to come out. He admitted something very personal. He had regrets. Despite all his awards, fame, and achievements, there were moments in his life he wished he could go back to. One of his deepest regrets was not spending enough time with his son when he was growing up. His work in films, the long hours, and constant pressure of the industry had taken much of his attention. While he was building a legendary career, some family moments passed by without him fully living them. Even more emotional was his reflection on his own father. He shared that his father had lived close enough for regular visits, but his busy career always seemed to get in the way. There was always another project, another deadline, another responsibility. Then suddenly, his father was gone. That loss stayed with him. It became a reminder that time does not wait, no matter how successful or busy a person may be. What makes his confession so meaningful is how familiar it feels. Beneath all the fame and achievement, he was still a son, a father, and a man thinking about the choices he made. His story quietly reminds us that success can build a name, a career, and a legacy, but it cannot replace lost time with loved ones. In the end, his reflection is not just about Hollywood or fame. It is about something deeper and more universal: the value of time, the importance of family, and the silent cost of always being too busy to pause and notice what truly matters. What was his early years like? What kind of upbringing did he have? Let's dive into the details of Clint Eastwood's childhood that was built on struggle, instability, and survival. From depression to destiny. Before Clint Eastwood became a global icon, he grew up during the harsh realities of the 1930s Great Depression in America. His family struggled with financial instability, frequent relocations, and the constant pressure of survival. Because his father moved often in search of work, Clint rarely experienced a stable home or lasting friendships. Each time he began adjusting to a new place, the family would move again, forcing him to restart his life repeatedly. This unstable childhood quietly shaped his worldview, teaching him early that nothing in life is permanent and that security can vanish unexpectedly without warning or preparation. Even when the family eventually settled in California, that sense of restlessness did not leave him. School never truly captured his interest. Rules felt unnecessary, and authority often felt irritating rather than guiding. He was not the kind of student who stood out academically or followed a clear path. Instead, he drifted through his younger years, trying different jobs and figuring things out as he went, without any strong direction pointing him toward the future. He took on a series of ordinary, physically demanding jobs: lifeguard, grocery clerk, steelworker, and firefighter. Each role was a way to get by, not a step toward fame. At that stage of life, nothing about him suggested Hollywood success. He was simply a young man working hard, living quietly, and trying to find his place in the world like many others around him. Then came a life-changing experience that may have left a permanent mark on his character. While serving in the military, Eastwood survived a terrifying plane crash over the Pacific Ocean. The aircraft went down unexpectedly at night, leaving him stranded in cold, dark waters far from safety. In that moment, there were no guarantees, no rescue in sight, only the struggle to stay alive. He had to swim through freezing waves, surrounded by darkness, uncertain whether he would even survive until morning. Experiences like that can change a person deeply. After coming face to face with death at such a young age, something inside him seemed to harden and settle at the same time. Fear lost its power over him in the same way uncertainty once had. He began to carry a quiet kind of strength, calm, focused, and unshaken by pressure. Looking back, many believe that moment helped shape the man the world would later recognize. The calm, controlled presence he became known for, both on screen and in real life, may have been born in those cold, dark waters of survival, where he learned that life is fragile and courage is often quiet. How did Clint Eastwood get into the Hollywood circle? What was the experience like for him? Let's dig into the details of how Hollywood rejected him before it worshipped him. From rejection to Hollywood legend. When Clint Eastwood first stepped into Hollywood, almost no one gave him a real chance of becoming a star. He was just another young man trying to break into an industry already full of polished faces, confident voices, and carefully shaped personalities. But Eastwood did not fit the usual mold that Hollywood loved. From the beginning, studio executives were not impressed. Many of them openly criticized him. Some said he could not act well enough. Others focused on his voice, calling it too rough or too flat. A few complained that his facial expressions were too stiff, as if he showed too little emotion on screen. In their eyes, he lacked the charm and energy expected of a leading man. Behind the scenes, many industry people doubted he would last long. He was often seen as awkward, still learning, and not fully ready for the spotlight. In a world where confidence and instant impact mattered, Eastwood looked like someone who might quietly fade away. For a long time, success seemed far out of reach. Years passed, and while other young actors quickly climbed the ladder of fame, Eastwood struggled to even get steady opportunities. He kept working, kept showing up, and kept trying, but Hollywood did not yet see him as important. Ironically, the same industry that would later celebrate him as a legend once treated him as replaceable. Then, slowly, things began to shift. His role in the television series Rawhide gave him something he had never truly had before: visibility. Week after week, audiences across the country began to notice him. They saw a different kind of presence on screen. He was not loud or flashy, but there was something strong and steady about him. A quiet force that made people pay attention even when he said very little. But the real turning point came later with Dirty Harry. That film changed everything. It did not just make him popular, it transformed how the world saw him. Suddenly, Clint Eastwood was no longer just another struggling actor. He had become a global name. From that moment on, his image solidified. He was calm but powerful, quiet but intense, controlled yet deeply commanding. Audiences were drawn to the way he could hold attention without shouting or overacting. While many stars relied on emotional speeches or dramatic gestures, Eastwood often did more with less. A simple stare, a long pause, or a few short words from him could shape an entire scene. Critics who once ignored or dismissed him began to take notice. The same people who doubted his ability now had to explain his success. His films began to dominate the box office, and his style became instantly recognizable. In time, Clint Eastwood was no longer just an actor trying to prove himself. He had become something larger. He became a symbol of strength, silence, and control. Hollywood did not just produce a successful actor in him, it helped create a lasting legend that would shape cinema for generations. Who was Clint Eastwood in Hollywood? Was he able to keep a private life as a Hollywood star? Let's take a look at the secret relationships and family scandals that followed him for decades. Behind the Hollywood legend's mask. As Clint Eastwood's fame grew across Hollywood and beyond, public interest in his private world also grew stronger. The more successful he became on screen, the more people wanted to know what his real life looked like away from the cameras. From the outside, Eastwood appeared calm, focused, and in control. He often played strong, disciplined men in his films. characters who stood firm under pressure and always seemed to know exactly what they wanted. But behind that polished public image was a far more complicated personal story that slowly unfolded over the years. Whispers about his relationships began to circulate. There were reports of affairs, secret romances, and emotional conflicts that stretched across decades. As time went on, it became publicly known that he fathered 8 children with 6 different women. Even so, many biographers suggested that the full truth of his private life might never be completely uncovered, adding even more mystery to his story. This contrast between his public and private life fascinated many people. The man who looked so controlled and emotionally steady on screen seemed far less predictable in his personal relationships. While his film characters often stood for loyalty and order, his real-life connections were sometimes marked by confusion, instability, and emotional pain. One of the most talked about and painful chapters involved actress Sandra Locke. For years, Locke and Eastwood shared both a romantic and professional relationship. On the surface, they looked like a powerful Hollywood couple. They worked together in multiple films and often appeared united, as though nothing could shake their bond. However, when their relationship eventually broke down, the situation turned bitter and highly public. What followed was not quiet separation, but a series of legal disputes and courtroom battles. These revealed serious accusations, including claims of betrayal, career interference, financial disagreements, and emotional harm. The image of Eastwood as calm and untouchable suddenly came under heavy public scrutiny. For many fans, this moment was a turning point. It was the first time they saw a different side of the Hollywood icon, one that felt more human, more flawed, and far less like the strong characters he played in movies. Years later, another emotional chapter played out in public view: the end of his 17-year marriage to Dina Eastwood. Many people were surprised because their relationship had seemed relatively stable compared to other celebrity marriages. They kept a low profile and rarely appeared in the headlines for scandal or drama. Still, even this long-standing marriage eventually came to an end, showing once again that Eastwood's personal life was far more complex than his screen roles suggested. Step by step, the image of the untouchable Hollywood legend began to fade, replaced by the reality of a man whose private life carried as much drama as the films he was famous for. Did Clint Eastwood experience a decline in his fame as a Hollywood star? What did he do to remain famous? Let's talk about how Clint Eastwood reinvented himself again and again. The relentless reinvention of Eastwood. Most actors eventually reach a point where their fame slowly fades. Some get stuck playing the same kind of roles again and again, so audiences stop seeing them as fresh. Others simply lose attention when new, younger stars arrive on the scene. In Hollywood, it is very common for big names of one era to quietly disappear when the world moves on. But Clint Eastwood refused to follow that pattern. Instead of allowing age or time to push him out, he kept changing and rebuilding his career. He first rose to fame as a strong, silent action star, known for tough characters and Western gunslinger roles. For many actors, that alone would have been the peak of their entire life in film. But for him, it was only the beginning of a much bigger journey. As Hollywood evolved, he did not cling to the past. He stepped behind the camera and slowly transformed himself into a serious and highly respected filmmaker. This shift was not easy, but it changed how the industry saw him. He was no longer just an actor with a strong screen presence. He became a storyteller with depth, vision, and emotional power. Then came Unforgiven. That film marked a turning point. It broke the old image people had of him as only a tough cowboy hero. Instead, it showed something deeper. A man willing to question violence, aging, guilt, and the cost of a violent life. The story felt honest and heavy, and it surprised many viewers. Critics praised it widely, and it earned major awards, firmly establishing him as an Oscar-winning director. Years later, he did it again with Million Dollar Baby. This time, audiences were not just impressed, they were deeply moved. The film told a painful and emotional story about dreams, struggle, and sacrifice. It stayed with viewers long after the credits rolled. Once again, it proved that he was not dependent on action roles or youthful energy. His strength now came from storytelling, emotion, and maturity. What makes his journey so remarkable is not only how long he has stayed in the industry, but how he managed to remain important while everything around him kept changing. Hollywood is a place where trends shift quickly. New styles replace old ones. Many careers rise fast and fall even faster. Yet through all of that, he stayed relevant, adapting without losing his identity. Even in his 90s, when most filmmakers of his generation had long retired, he was still active. He continued directing major films, including Juror Number 2, showing that his passion for filmmaking never truly slowed down. That is what makes his story almost unbelievable. It is not just about fame or success. It is about endurance, reinvention, and the rare ability to grow with time instead of being defeated by it. Was there any moment that Clint Eastwood got emotional on the television? How did it happen? Let's find out. The human side of legends. Then came a quiet but powerful moment that made many people see Clint Eastwood in a completely new light. It happened during a rare public appearance when the legendary actor and filmmaker spoke openly about something he had long kept private: growing old. There was no drama, no controversy, and no big announcement. Yet what he said carried a deep emotional weight that stayed with many who heard it. Eastwood reflected on aging, on the steady passing of time, and on loss. He spoke in a calm, simple way, but his words revealed something heavy underneath. He talked about how many people he had known in his long life were no longer here. Close friends were gone. People he had worked with for decades had passed away. Fellow actors who once stood beside him in Hollywood's golden years had slowly disappeared, one after another. It was as if he had watched entire chapters of his life close, without being able to stop them. Generations of colleagues and companions had come and gone, while he remained. What made this moment stand out was not sadness alone, but honesty. Clint Eastwood has always been known for his strong, quiet, and tough public image. For most of his career, he rarely showed emotion in public interviews. He did not often talk about personal pain or inner struggles. Instead, he kept things controlled, simple, and private, letting his work speak for him. But now, something had shifted. In this rare moment, people could sense a different tone in his voice. At 95, he was no longer just the strong screen legend audiences had known for decades. There was still strength in him, still confidence, but it was mixed with something softer and more human. It was the feeling of a man who had lived a very long life and was fully aware of it. As he spoke, many noticed what could be described as quiet tiredness behind his famous calmness. It was not weakness, but the natural weight that comes from carrying almost a century of memories. Memories of success, failure, friendships, loss, mistakes, victories, and everything in between. For the first time, Clint Eastwood did not feel like an untouchable Hollywood figure. He sounded like an ordinary man thinking deeply about life, time, and the fact that no one escapes aging. That is what made the moment so powerful. There was no scandal or shocking statement involved. Just truth. Simple, honest truth about life moving forward, no matter who you are. And that truth hit many people harder than any movie scene or public controversy ever could. Because in that moment, audiences were reminded of something uncomfortable but real. Even the strongest people grow old. Even the most famous names eventually step back from the world's attention. Even those who seem larger than life eventually face quiet evenings filled with reflection. And with that realization came another thought. Behind every icon is a human being, a person who loves, loses, remembers, and regrets like everyone else. Clint Eastwood's words, though simple, carried that reminder clearly. Fame does not stop time. Success does not block loss. Strength does not cancel out emotion. In the end, what people saw was not just a legend speaking, but a man honestly facing the reality that life always arrives at the same destination for everyone. With all the fame Clint Eastwood got, was there anything he seemed to have lacked? Can we say that fame got him everything? Let's take a glance at how fame could not protect him from loneliness, regret, or time. Behind fame lies humanity. Throughout his life, Clint Eastwood seemed to achieve almost everything Hollywood values most: fame, wealth, power, influence, long career, and lasting success. But as he grew older, his reflections showed something deeper and more human. None of these things could shield him from what every person eventually faces: aging, heartbreak, loss, and loneliness. The strong cowboy image that once made him seem untouchable slowly faded, and behind it appeared a more honest picture of life lived under bright public light. People began to see him not only as a film star, but as a man who survived poverty, war, rejection, broken relationships, public criticism, and the quiet pain of losing many people he once knew and loved. This change in understanding shifted how many people saw him. For years, audiences admired him for being fearless on screen, but later they began to respect him for something more real. The honesty of admitting that simply surviving life also brings emotional weight and struggle. Maybe that is why so many people around the world connected deeply with this realization. Beneath the famous movies, awards, controversies, and carefully built Hollywood image, there was always a real person trying to handle life, ambition, relationships, success, and growing old, just like anyone else. In the end, that truth became even more powerful than the myth people had built around him. It showed that no matter how bright a person's success may shine, it does not remove the human experience of pain and change. Over time, people began to understand that true strength is not only in appearing strong, but in being honest about life's difficulties and accepting them with courage. His story also reminds us that fame can build a powerful image, but it cannot build a shield against time or human emotion. Yet instead of weakening him, these realizations made his life story even more relatable to many people who face similar struggles in their own quiet ways. That is why his later reflections feel less like celebrity talk and more like a universal lesson about life itself. It tells us that behind every successful person is a human being who still feels joy and pain, who still loses people, who still learns, and who still searches for meaning, even after reaching great heights of achievement. It also shows that reflection later in life can turn public admiration into deeper understanding and respect for a person's full journey, rather than just their achievements on screen or in headlines. In this way, his life becomes a reminder that even legends are human at heart, and time eventually reveals that truth to everyone. Ultimately, it replaces myth with reality, and fame with shared humanity and truth. So what do you think about Clint Eastwood's confessions and emotional moments? Do you think it could be the effect of old age? We'd love to hear your opinions in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe.